All right, welcome to the live Q&A Ask an Administrator. You can ask questions about school discipline. You can ask questions about just about anything. In fact, I'll put a few more topics up here. There we go. So really, we've got a few we can discuss. And we're not really limited to these topics. So I'm watching the chat, looking for your comments, your questions, the direction that you want to take the conversation. Really, we can go just about anywhere with this. On one of my last lives, we ended up spending a lot of time talking about live streaming equipment, about how to get set up with your studio with things like a Stream Deck, a high quality camera, whether that's a high quality webcam or a DSLR, Nikon or Canon. We also talked a little bit about lighting and about desktop software, things like using OBS, as you see here, to be able to manage your broadcast. So feel free to ask me about any of those things. Parents out there who have kids who are struggling in school with behavior problems, happy to talk about those things, about ways that you can work toward improving that. Anything else about K-12 education, school leadership, educational philosophy. Like I say, a lot of different things we can do, a lot of ways we can go with it. So here we are, the music stops. That means maybe the talking needs to start. So while I could dive right in and talk about some common topics, what are the things on your mind? You know, I spend, in the role that I've been in for the last 5 or 6 years, I spend a lot of my time on student discipline. A lot of my time, investing my time and effort, as I often tell students, in helping them stay out of trouble, because I would much rather put the work into there, keeping them out of trouble, than putting the work in on the back end where we're suspending, we're documenting, we're calling home. I always want to stay ahead of it. So how do we stay ahead of it? Well, you take action early. You build relationships with students. I think this is one of the things that ties into a video I did the other day about rule number 1 in education: don't be a jerk. Especially when you have the power and the authority, there's no need to be a jerk. You've got the weight of your role. You can be kind and compassionate, even when you are being the disciplinarian, even when you're addressing behaviors. you can still value, respect, and care about the person that you're dealing with. So I guess that's to say that one of the first ways that I work to get ahead of things is that I make that connection with the student, our relationship, our ability to have a conversation. I make that the priority. That's the first thing I address. I want the students, the kids, to always feel like discipline is that comes second. That's less important. That's a bad choice. That's a mistake. That's a path chosen that could have been better. But it's the individual, it's the person who matters to me. And I think when you're able to start building relationships and connections like that, when they know that somebody at school cares about them, when they know that somebody at school is working to support them through things, that's really the first place where you start getting ahead of it. You've got to be able to have conversations with kids. I think I'm in my 22nd year in education. It's my 22nd year in education. That's after having spent years in the Marine Corps. It's also after having spent 7 years operating my own wireless communications business. Not that I was getting rich at that or hitting it big or anything, but I do have 7 years of small business experience. I really do feel like that experience, working frontline sales and customer service, as well as other experiences I had working in retail or restaurants, working with the public, I feel like those were supremely valuable experiences to help me build the skills and the tools that I use today as an administrator. Things like going into a conversation, being completely open to the possibility that I've gotten something wrong. Going into the conversation seeking, like Covey says, seeking first to understand, then to be understood. So a lot to consider there. Let me do this. Let me go to a brief intermission here. I'm going to come right back. Basically what I want to do is I want to make sure that I'm able to more carefully track how many people we've got watching at the moment and what comments are popping up. So hang in there with me and I will be right back. All right, coming back to you here momentarily. All right, coming back to you here momentarily. All right, and here we are. All right, and here we are. Yay. All right. We've got a question in the chat. So, question in the chat is, what is all of the talk about equity in schools? Well, the talk about equity in schools amounts to this, that everybody doesn't need the same thing. They need what they actually need. And I'll use I want to use an example that my ex-wife always used in her classroom with her fourth grade students. She used the example that, hey, let's say we all go to Disneyland, we ride a roller coaster, and somebody gets hurt. Somebody scrapes up their leg while riding the roller coaster. And then, but they're not the only one who was hurt. Someone else also broke an arm while they were riding the roller coaster. And then someone else bumped their head. Okay, well, so person who scraped up their knee, all they need is a Band-Aid. So how about we just give everybody Band-Aids and call it good? That would be equality, right? Equal. Everybody gets the same thing. That wouldn't be equitable because it's not what they need. Each individual needs different treatments. Now, then if you think about, let's just take it back to a context of, you got different types of people attending schools. You got some people who have all kinds of support at home. You got some people who have less support at home. You have some people who are coming to school and they've only been learning to speak English for about a year. You cannot provide all of those students with exactly the same instruction, exactly the same resources, exactly the same supports, and feel like you're doing a good job. Equity means that you assess the needs of each individual student and treat each student like an individual and provide for them the supports that they need to grow and improve and succeed. So equity is not, tell you what it's not. It's not an excuse. It's not a free pass to people. What it is recognizing that people are in different situations. They're coming from different circumstances. They have different skill sets. They have different abilities when we first start working with them, and different challenges. And to me, when we talk about equity, it means that we are working to address those various inequitable situations, to mitigate that, and to help put students all in a place where they can all work to grow and succeed from where they are. So, yeah, thanks for the question, Paul. All right, what else do we have? Still looking for questions about education, about school discipline. It's interesting. The engagement is so different on the different platforms. So I'm trying to be mindful here and understanding that, we're not going to see the same kind of engagement that we do on TikTok. But yeah, please feel free to jump in here. All right, the applause tell us that we've got another question in the chat. So what about DEI? What is DEI? Well, DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we talked a little bit about what equity is, and how equity is recognizing that everyone's coming from different circumstances with different abilities, different levels of support, different maybe different language abilities. So diversity, equity, inclusion is work that we do to make sure that we are inclusive, that we are making space for everyone, that we are making, part of the critical work we do as educators is making school a safe place. In order to learn effectively, you have to be willing to take risks. You need to feel safe to take risks. And without a space that values diversity, without a space that makes people feel included and seen for who they are, it's difficult for people to feel safe. There are a whole lot of things that are wrapped up in diversity, equity, inclusion. Anything from learning people's names and not just learning them, but learning them to say them correctly, not giving people nicknames, greeting students at the door and taking an interest in them as people, and taking an interest in them in a way that is not judgmental, that doesn't come into the educator-student relationship making them feel like there's anything wrong with who they are or what culture they come from, what first language they spoke, what their views are on the world, what their gender identification is, what their preferred pronouns are. It's creating space for all of those things. I mean, and even if you're someone who disagrees with any kind of discussion on gender identity or pronouns or anything, I think it really has to beg the question, like, why would it be an educator's job to stick their nose into somebody's business and tell them that they're right or wrong about who they are? It's not. It's not. It's an educator's business to create a learning environment, to create learning experiences, to make students feel safe and seen and heard and valued and appreciated. We're working on developing well-rounded people who are capable of critical thinking, who are capable of functioning in diverse environments in a society that is diverse. So, yeah, that's what DEI is. Now, I could go into more of a dictionary definition for you. Let's here you go. Let's not go dictionary definition. Let's ask ChatGPT to explain DEI to a teenager. How about that? Because hopefully we can all function at a teenage level. So there we go. We're going to let ChatGPT explain DEI as though we are teenagers. So there it is. DEI stands for diversity, equity, inclusion. It's all about celebrating and respecting the differences between people. These differences can be anything from the color of our skin, the place we were born, the languages we speak, to the things like what we believe in, who we love. Hey, ChatGPT, shouldn't that be whom we love? And even the hobbies we enjoy. Sorry, no judgment here. Leave space. Imagine how boring the world would be if everyone was exactly the same. Diversity brings a mix of viewpoints, experiences, and ideas, which can make our communities more interesting and vibrant. You know, I'm going to pause here, and I want to say that I grew up much of my life in an environment that was not particularly diverse. I often say that I grew up in a very binary form of diversity in the Central Valley in California, where the people I saw were either white or Hispanic. And I saw a lot of class tied to those racial dynamics. I grew up getting messages that I didn't even know I was getting. Messages like, it's okay to be a certain race as long as you're not a certain race and act like this, or a certain race and act like that. You know, trying to separate it. Like, I don't see color, but, you know, just these things aren't okay. And not even recognizing the systemic racism that was inherent in all of that thinking. Anyway, so equity. What is equity? It's about ensuring everyone has what they need. I think this is what my examples were getting at. What they need to be successful and happy, recognizing that this might not be the same for everyone. It's different from equality, where everyone gets the same thing. Equity is more personalized. It's about fairness and achieving outcomes by sometimes giving different levels of support based on different needs. And here's why it matters. Think about it like this. If you and your friend are trying to see over a fence and you're taller, you might not need a boost. But if your friend is shorter, giving them a stool to stand on is equity. It's giving people what they need to have the same opportunity. So what about inclusion? Inclusion is about making sure everyone feels welcomed, valued, and part of the group. It's not just about being there. It's about truly being included and involved. You know, oftentimes we're asked, what are we doing about bullying in schools? Well, you know what? Addressing things with a mindset of inclusion is something that we do to address bullying. We're modeling behaviors for students. If students see us judging people, separating people, categorizing people, disrespecting people, nicknaming some people, using sarcasm at other people, what we're doing is we're modeling bullying if we do those things. Whereas if we model inclusion, we're modeling the antithesis of bullying. And I think actually that's a good way to look at it too, is that in many ways, inclusion is the antithesis of bullying. So why does it matter? Have you ever felt left out of a game or a conversation at school? It's not a great feeling. Inclusion means creating environments where everyone feels like they belong and can participate fully, no matter their background or differences. So DEI is like having a party where diversity is inviting many different people to the party. Equity is making sure everyone can access the party, like providing a ramp for someone who uses a wheelchair. Inclusion is when everyone at the party is asked to dance and join in the fun. By focusing on DEI, we help create a world where everyone can thrive and contribute their unique spark. It's about building stronger, more creative, and supportive communities and spaces for everyone. You know, I love that question came up. It's a good question, and it's disappointing to me that there's as much pushback against DEI as there is in the world. So, what next? Any more comments or questions? Let's see if we can get the next comment or question before the 2.5 minute little music timer there runs out. So a reminder again, we're looking for any kind of questions, comments, stories about school leadership, about K-12 education, about discipline in schools, especially, I can especially speak to California Education Code. I can speak to the things that students can be suspended or expelled for. I can speak to questions like, what should you do if your student is being suspended and you think that it's not fair? Where do you go? What do you do? What kind of information should you base your assessment of the situation on? And then I think what we'll do here is, if we don't have any comments here soon, I'll probably go ahead and wrap up this live. Got 1 minute to go here on the timer. I suppose before we go here, one thing we could do is just do a little bit of checking on what's going on in news and education. Teachers in California are still making about 5% less than they did a decade ago. Schools across the U.S. are increasingly using artificial intelligence and video cameras. Oh, interesting, to detect weapons. According to World Bank, the percentage of 10-year-old children in low and middle income countries who are unable to read and understand a short age-appropriate text increased from 57% before the pandemic to an estimated 70% in 2022. That's disturbing. So what about California education news? California teachers struggle despite having the highest salaries in the nation. Yeah, because the cost of living in California is off the charts. Making 5% less than teachers did a decade ago. Yeah, but in order to afford a mortgage in a median-priced home in San Diego, for example, more than 240,000 would need to be earned. Did any of you out there know Chris Edley, Dean of UC Berkeley School of Law? New study examines the worth of a California college degree. A report released Thursday analyzes how long it would take low and moderate income students in California to recoup the money they spent on a college degree, showing a college's return on investment, CalMatters reported. For example, students graduating from Cal State Los Angeles and Cal State San Bernardino would have recouped the cost of their education with less than 3 months of a typical salary, according to CalMatters. Excuse me? Students graduating from Cal State Los Angeles. Oh, because these are inexpensive colleges? Is that what they're saying? I'm still a little dubious. Students at 79% of all California colleges in the report can recoup their costs in 5 years or less. It takes less than a year for students from nearly a third of the colleges. I think as far as recouping the cost, come on, I want to see more about this study. Can we see the study? The report merges several concepts into one number: the net price of a college degree after all financial aid is calculated, typical earnings 10 years after a student first enrolls in a school, how much higher those wages are compared to what young adults earn with just a high school diploma, yeah, they're talking about recouping the costs as a gross number. Like they're not saying that you're going to have your student loans paid off. They're not saying that you're going to be able to pay back what it took. No, because you're still going to be trying to live off of that money that you're making. Who's responsible for this report? CalMatters? Nonprofit, nonpartisan state news? I don't know. Are they nonpartisan? Let's ask ChatGPT. Yeah, well, okay. All right. Well, I think maybe we should call it a wrap. Does anyone else have any questions? Hmm. Hmm. Wonder if it's better. Okay. All right, gang. So we're going to call it a wrap for today. Thank you all for joining me. Really appreciate the all of those of you who have subscribed and who have liked the live. Continuing my work to try to get on here more regularly and see how I do at that. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.